the essential components of advertising sophistication, the value of playing the long game with your digital ad spend, and using account-based marketing to transform a freemium product into a powerful enterprise software solution. That and more on this episode of Advertising Influencers.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.
Hello, hello. Hope you are doing very, very well wherever you are listening. My name is Ander, and welcome to the second episode of Advertising Influencers, a podcast powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page platform, where I and the rest of my very talented team are on a continual mission to lower the cost of customer acquisition. I am so very excited to be here with you and the rest of our worldwide audience and community of all-star marketers. And I am also very excited to continue diving deeper into how the best and brightest marketers are breaking through the noise to deliver their message to the right audiences at the right time. The previous episode, episode number 1, featured our very own founder and the CEO here at Instapage, Tyson Quick. It mostly covered a discussion on the increasing importance of advertising personalization as the lowest hanging fruit for increasing the ROI of your digital ad spend. And yes, that theme continues into this episode with our guest, Andrew Dumont, VP of Marketing at Bitly, one of the more, frankly, matured and household names of the marketing technology landscape. I've been using them for quite a while. Perhaps you're quite familiar with them as well, and they've been around quite a long time, but they are up to some very, very new, exciting things. I've actually spoken with Andrew a couple times over the past few years, and let me tell you, he is certainly an all-star. That is a very light way of saying it. He's been deep on the front lines of digital marketing with companies like Cmos, with a startup studio, Betaworks in New York City. He was featured in Forbes in 30 Under 30 for 2014, and most recently at Bitly, he's been tasked with the fascinating challenge of taking a product from a freemium tool into an enterprise-level solution. We've got a lot of very interesting stuff to talk about over the course of the next few minutes. So without further ado, let's go say hello to Andrew. It's always fun to do podcast interviews where I get to interview somebody that I interviewed previously. And even though it was in an entirely different context, it is a pleasure to speak to you once again, Andrew. Andrew Dumont, VP of Marketing at Bitly. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you on. Here at Instapage, we talk a lot about advertising, we talk a lot about personalization, and we love hearing from people like you who are running marketing at organizations like Bitly, how paid is integrating into other marketing channels, kind of on a macro level, how everything is working together. But I think before we dive into that, Andrew, let's just hear a little bit about you. You've got this really, really cool background with companies like Moz, a company that you built that ended up being acquired. You spent some time at Betaworks, but how about in your own words, maybe the 30-second nutshell of your professional journey?
Yeah, sure. I've been doing early stage startups since I was 18 was my first one, and that's kind of the thing that hooked me on building companies and scaling companies. It's been something that I've been addicted to and have loved the process ever since. So started my career there and have essentially moved around to a number of companies, some of the companies that you've mentioned, and really have been focused in that growth stage portion of the company, and it's been a lot of fun. Like you said, now I'm running marketing at Bitly, which is one of those household names that I kind of grew up on the internet with. And
exactly right.
It's been a ton of fun and a great challenge to try to grow this business now. So yeah, always in a growth sort of role or a marketing sort of role, and I generally like B2B and software as a service businesses, and that's kind of where I've spent most of my time.
Awesome. So given that we're talking about all of this in the context of paid acquisition and digital advertising, do you remember in your journey as a marketer, as a growth marketer, however you want to define yourself, do you remember the first time that you really encountered advertising and paid media as a growth channel?
Yeah, I think it was in the first startup that I did actually, and it was really just poking around. I think with Google, right, and trying to figure it out back then. And obviously, it's matured a lot since then. But that's kind of the my first introduction to it was that first startup that I did.
And even though you're not in this stuff day to day, I know you have a director of demand generation or someone who's in a similar role over at Bitly.
Yeah.
What is your philosophy of paid acquisition that's evolved over the course of your career so far?
So the beauty of paid is that it is, I think, the really the only channel where if you fine tune it and you really nail it, it's one of those channels where you can give it $1 and it can produce $1.50. It's rare in marketing to find channels like that, right? Where if you fine tune it, if you get it to that point, with a pretty high level of confidence that if you invest, then it'll produce the outcome that you want. And obviously, it takes a while to get there, but I look at it as that is that constant channel for us that has that predictability to it. I would say more so than others, which is fantastic. And when you think about the split between the different channels that you leverage, paid it has to be one of them. And generally, from my experience, it ranges about 10 to 20% of spend goes towards that paid channel. And that's kind of where I've seen the sweet spot. But in terms of the way that it's evolved, it's one of those things now that for modern marketing organizations that are doing content marketing, it's obviously a great boost there as well. So you can kind of think about it, obviously, from the direct capture new customers, but also you can see it as this kind of longer life cycle marketing piece to, boost and get exposure for the content marketing pieces that are obviously a key piece to, I think most marketing orgs today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much of anything, it's a distribution channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said something interesting about how it's one of the few channels that you can really invest $1 in and get $1.50 out of it.
Yeah.
Of course, that's assuming that you're testing appropriately, that you're targeting the right audience, that you have your personas really locked down,
Yeah.
et cetera, and you're continuing to test. I've spoken with a few people, because there are these people out there who say that paid is a waste of money in an early stage company. In a late stage company, when you've got this massive budget, maybe it's worth experimenting more. But to kind of play devil's advocate here, why do you think some people are not doing well with paid or investing their resources poorly and getting poor results?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it is just sophistication, actually. Number one, there's a huge number of platforms that you can leverage, right? And I think picking the platform, number one, is part of the process, which is challenging. Number two, obviously, within that, once you find the right platform, finding the right segments, finding the right messaging, that's challenging and it takes a lot of time. Generally, what you see in early stage is the amount of free time or the amount of time that you can invest in growth is fairly limited unless you have some good resources there and some sophisticated resources there. So I think that the challenge is really just an investment piece and a sophistication piece that is hard to find, frankly. It's not easy, and it takes time, and it takes testing, and it takes maneuvering to what the market is telling you or what the channel is telling you. I think it's really tough to nail it. Is really like the TLDR there.
What I'm kind of hearing you say, what I've heard other people say as well, is that when you're in this very, very early stage company and you really need to get growth now, like you kind of just need to make it happen, it's possible that paid might not be the lowest hanging fruit if you're not executing on it appropriately. And something that you've actually spoken about or you've written about in the past is the difference between going for the long game versus going for the short game. And of course, you can look at this in terms of content, in terms of SEO, in terms of a number of other growth channels.
Yep.
How do you view paid in relation to the long versus the short game?
Well, I mean, I think it's the same kind of mindset, right? And the people that fail with it are the ones that think, I'm going to be able to give paid money and it's going to produce money back to me immediately, just like any other channel. And I think that the ones that don't succeed with paid are the ones that have that mindset. I mean, to your point, it's really is a longer term channel and a longer term investment because it does take so much refining to really nail it. And actually, we're still working on it, frankly, at Bitly, because it is such a challenging thing. But yeah, I think it's really just a short-term mindset that prevents people from being able to leverage it. And I think that's why you get people that kind of have that negative sort of mindset towards it, is because they've thrown money on Facebook ads or whatever, and they haven't sending money out, and they're like, oh, paid doesn't work, right? Those are the same people that say, I wrote a blog post, content marketing doesn't work, right? It's just the same kind of deal.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with hearing that story as well about content.
Me as well.
You mentioned Bitly, and so let's actually shift towards kind of what you guys are doing there, some of what you're dealing with at the moment.
Yeah.
This is obviously a conversation that marketers in pretty much every company that has any sort of freemium business model are dealing with. But One of the things that I see you guys working with at Bitly, you have these new enterprise tools, which frankly look awesome, but there's a challenge associated with getting people from the free tool to the paid tool. And obviously, that's where your revenue comes from. That's what's going to be really, really important.
Yep.
Where does paid come into play with upgrading from the free to the paid tool in conjunction with the rest of what you're doing in a marketing organization?
I'll just pause on the challenge I think that exists for Bitly, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the inherited sort of perception, right, for us is that we're a free link shortener for Twitter, right? And it is, I would say, very, very difficult to get people from that general perception to an enterprise level software product, right? That has a year contract and is in the $1,000 a month sort of range. It's a step, right? And I think that's one of like the exciting challenges for me, frankly, from a marketing perspective. That was one of the things that got me over here. It was I think it's just such an interesting challenge where you have broad general awareness, but you don't really have great understanding of what the product offering is today. So to your question specifically, the way we're thinking about paid in our world. So let me speak to the evolution that we've gone through in my time. So the first focus for us was really building the sort of like inbound machine, right, and building the channels that build repeatable, consistent lead volume, right.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the past 6 months, we've shifted more towards an account-based marketing approach. So, and I'll get to why that plugs into the paid side. But basically what that has allowed us to do is it's allowed us to take these inbound channels that we've built and basically turn them towards more of the accounts that we want to talk to. And that's part of the sophistication around, who our current customer is today, who we want our customer to be, and kind of creating an ideal profile of our ideal customer. And that's kind of what makes up our accounts that we're targeting today. And then now what we're doing in terms of leveraging our free product and paid acquisition is we're taking those named accounts that we have, and we are doing some remarketing stuff on the free users that log in that are named accounts, and doing direct paid acquisition against named accounts for the people that are not using the free product. So we kind of have like this really cool split, and that's like one of the, I think, big values of having a freemium sort of model, is you can leverage a lot of your free user base against paid, against content, against all the things that, or against email marketing specifically, actually, to really drive those exact accounts. So that's kind of how we're leveraging it. We're leveraging free usage essentially against paid acquisition and trying to expand visibility to those named accounts with paid acquisition, which has been actually pretty effective for us.
I'd love if you could elaborate on exactly what you mean by advertise against those who are using the free version of the product.
Yeah, I mean, so we're basically taking our free usage data, right? So we have our named accounts that we're going after, and we have a number of those named accounts are free users, and they're active free users, but their awareness of our enterprise product is probably pretty low, right? So we're taking that usage data and we're basically targeting those people and those accounts through paid acquisition.
Gotcha. And it's no secret that there are other link shorteners out there. I know I'm oversimplifying the product, and there's a lot more that you guys have going on.
Yeah.
And this is something I imagine you experienced at Stride as well, when you basically built a CRM in this incredibly crowded market. You got it acquired, and ultimately that was a success for you. But how do you approach advertising and marketing in general when you are in a crowded market where there are so many marketing technology tools, so many enterprise tools available?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super tough, but it's the way that we've thought about it is we don't want to play in the link shortener market.
Right.
Even though that's the thing that I would say that we own today, but we really want to step into a new market, and we're kind of actually more in the customer experience world now. Actually, that's kind of where we're focusing, and that's where I think our enterprise product fits really well within. So I think that the key thing there is finding the segments outside of maybe what you own today, or where it's very crowded, and kind of stepping into potentially emerging markets or newer categories, and trying to establish yourself there. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it, actually.
One of the things that we believe here at Instapage is that every promotion needs a page. We think that you should be using a landing page and using ads to articulate the unique value proposition of a product to a specific segment of users, depending on how you're targeting it or whatever that is.
Yep.
And what that comes down to for us is an increasing level of advertising personalization. And obviously, you getting to that one-on-one advertising or marketing is not something that is easy to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's safe to say that the one-size-fits-all approach does not really work anymore. How does personalization fit into how you think about growth in marketing in general?
I mean, I think this is where marketing has to go, and it's where it is going. The days of receiving a promotion or an advertisement that is not relevant to you or your interests or the platform you're consuming it on, or all those things. Those are going away. And I think that that's better actually for the internet as a whole to have that go away. So when I think about personalization as a marketer, I mean, it's the thing that you should always strive for. And we're getting closer there. I think the tools are still relatively immature on this stage. I think there's, Optimizely's doing some really cool stuff with this. And there's players that are definitely producing cool tech for this. I mean, that's where we always want to get to. I mean, if I could, have a page specifically for every named account that speaks specifically to their challenges, to their business specifically, to their, call out the company that they're with by name. Having that sort of experience is the thing that's really going to change conversion rates significantly, and also, better the experience for the people that are landing on the page. I mean, that's where everything has to go, and that's where I think as a marketer, you need to consistently and constantly kind of push yourself to become more personalized, become more targeted to the individuals that you're speaking to.
Could not agree more. And on that note, what else do you think is coming in the future of this space, in the future of spending dollars on your marketing efforts?
Oh man, well, I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation of tech. I mean, if you look at the space, and it's been super interesting to watch. I mean, I've essentially been in marketing technology for 10 years now.
Right.
It's funny. It was just a number of tools that exist, and how specialized those tools are has been amazing to me. So if you look at like the Lumascape of all the marketing tech, it's just incredible, right? So I think there's going to be a consolidation in software, which I think should be good for marketers actually.
Awesome.
But I also think that, to your point on the personalization, I think that's going to be really where everything has to go. And I think that's where it's already starting to go. And, it's something that we're thinking about as well, right? I mean, we have interesting data on consumption patterns of, millions of individuals, right? What types of links they like clicking on, the category of those links, when they click on them, what device that they're on. And that gives us a really interesting picture on the way that we can help marketers, better communication to those people. So we're thinking about it, and I think that that's a huge thing that you kind of nailed with that question.
Awesome. Now, as somebody you're in a leadership role at Bitly, you're overseeing everything that's going on with marketing. Obviously, you have a lot of other things to think about outside of paid, and you have somebody who manages all of your digital advertising efforts themselves. What advice do you have for other VPs or CMOs or people who are in a strategic marketing role when it comes to working with their paid channels and incorporating that into the rest of how they think about what they're doing with their marketing?
That's a good question. I think the first thing is you have to find very, very talented people for the channels that you invest in. And I was lucky enough to find somebody great there, and he's been a huge asset. So I think having somebody, number one, that just like has the sophistication and has the knowledge to think about paid in the bigger picture and has the capacity to think that way, I think is super critical, because like you said, it's now kind of a key distribution piece for everything that you're doing from a marketing perspective. I think it's a big thing, and it's obviously easier said than done, but I think that's a big piece. The other piece that we recently took on was I took over the sales development team.
Okay, cool.
Which is the essentially first touch on all the leads that we bring in
Right.
the door. And I think that that's been very powerful as a marketer. So anyone who's in like enterprise SaaS or anything where you capture leads and then you kind of don't really know what happens after that point, I think it's really, really important to understand what's happening once a lead comes in the door and what that conversation's like and what's happening on the front lines. So that's been a really powerful thing for us, frankly, as a team, to understand what we're doing, how it's working, and how it's not working, and being able to adapt from there. So I'm a huge advocate of marketing owning, or at least being heavily involved in, the sales development process in an enterprise SaaS sort of environment.
Well, Andrew, we share many of the many similar philosophies, which is one of the reasons that it's especially enjoying to interview someone like yourself. So, Andrew, once again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure having you on our flagship podcast here at Instapage. We like to ask everyone who comes on the show, is there anything that anyone listening to this interview, is there anything that they can do to check you guys out specifically? Maybe something they should specifically look at on your website or whatever it may be.
Definitely swing by bit.ly.com and check out the enterprise page. I think it's interesting to get some background on what we're trying to do there. So I think that's a good place to start. And we actually replatformed all of our tools, a free product, a paid product on Bitly. So if you haven't logged in for a while, it's a beautiful interface now, and it's awesome. And the team has been hard at work on it. So definitely check back in. I know it's it's been around for a while, and it's cool to kind of see it evolve. So that would kind of be the thing that I would point to.
Awesome. Andrew, once again, thank you so much. Pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Here are the takeaways from our conversation with Andrew Dumont. According to Andrew, paid acquisition is one of the only channels that offers a confident and direct return on investment with the proper tuning. It's a consistent channel that has a far stronger degree of predictability when you compare it to others. That said, digital advertising is certainly not a guarantee, and when it doesn't work, one of the main reasons is a lack of sophistication. This includes picking the right ad platform, identifying the correct segmentation of your audience, and fine-tuning the messaging. It's also essential to have an effective testing system. The days of receiving a promotion or an advertisement that is not relevant to you or your interests are gone. And as Andrew says, it's actually going to be better for the internet as a whole, beyond what we do as marketers. As the personalization of advertising and messaging increases, the value of all web-based experiences will increase as well. It is always a pleasure to connect with Andrew, one of the brightest minds in the business, and I'm sure I'm not alone in my excitement for Bitly's growth as they continue to scale their efforts with their new enterprise solution. As always, a complete transcript of our conversation with Andrew can be found on the show notes page with every other episode of Advertising Influencers at instapage.com/podcast. I am really excited for the next episode, where we will continue this deep dive into personalized paid acquisition with thoughts on sequential advertising from the talented Yuri Timin, head of growth at Grammarly, one of the fastest growing Google Chrome extensions and a tool that I and many other marketers are using every single day. If you have any thoughts or questions or ideas, whatever it may be, about this episode with Andrew or about Instapage, or again, whatever else is on your mind, or you'd simply like to say hello, anything's fair game. I would absolutely love to hear from you and help however I can. Feel free to send me an email. It is Ander, ANDER, at instapage.com, and that goes for the rest of my team as well. Drop us a note on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, and one of my colleagues will be in touch. On that note, my name is Ander, and on behalf of the entire team here at Instapage, cheers to your future success, and cheers to better marketing. I will talk to you soon.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.